Hey guys, I'm super excited for tonight. If we have not gotten the chance to meet y'all, my name is Kam, and I have the honor of being your youth pastor here at Elevation Matthews. I'm grateful for this house, grateful for this place. I really do believe that I have the best job in being your youth pastor, but that's all thanks to the amazing leadership that we have. And Pastor Stephen, Pastor Holly, thank you guys so much for the leadership, the care, the development that you've given us over this house. I'm grateful to be under this, but not only under the covering of these amazing pastors, but also our campus pastors and Pastor Philip, Pastor Chelsea, and their spouses, Chris and Lindsay. I love you guys so much. Grateful to be a part of this community. I'm grateful to be a part of this campus. And I truly believe that we have the best youth ministry in the world, led by the amazing Tim Summers and Rebecca Summers. We go crazy, y'all. I'm so excited, so pumped to be a part of everything that God is doing right now. But the amazing thing about my life is not just the fact that I have the best job in the world, but it's the fact that I'm married to the most beautiful, fantastic, amazing, Boricua Latina woman, Alyssa. I love you so much. Words can't even explain. If you guys know a little bit of me and Alyssa's story, we are from Orlando, Florida. And during our COVID season, when we were all in lockdown, me and Alyssa were engaged, and we were like, God, tell us what you want for our marriage. Tell us what you want, as the world just kind of seems to be shut down. And we felt like God was saying, you need to plant your family in Charlotte. You need to plant your family in Elevation Church. And we didn't know that it meant staff. We didn't know that it meant everything that we get to see at Matthews, but we knew that God had a calling for us. And babe, I just want to say I'm grateful for everything that God has done in our lives. And I wouldn't want to do this life with anyone else but you. I honor you. I love you. Thank you for being a part of this with me. I think that we have the best church in the world, y'all. I'm kind of biased. I think I might fight someone over that. I'm not going to lie. I think that we have the best church in the world, not only because we're able to connect with so many people within our communities and within our campuses, but all around the world. We see people from Australia and India, and we're able to connect with so many people. But one of the many assets that I see that we have that we're able to use to connect with people is social media. And I know there's a couple people in the room, you got a little bit tense, because you're like, social media is probably the worst thing that's ever happened in our generation. But then if I talk to a couple of you guys, you might say, yo, I think social media might be the best thing that I have ever experienced in my entire life. And I'm just going to stand somewhere in the middle of those two opinions, because I think that social media can be your greatest or your worst asset that you can use. It just all depends on how you use it. I really do believe that social media is one of the leading factors of anxiety in our world today, of depression in our world today. But I also don't think that we would be able to connect with the people we've been able to be connected with in our church without social media. We wouldn't even be able to see lives change without an asset like that. So I understand the tension in that. I understand that. And you could do this with Instagram. In fact, a couple months ago, our youth ministry posted some posts about Orlando. We posted about Disney. We posted about Universal. And some of you guys were DMing me, and you're like, Kam, I think we got hacked. And I was like, hey, man, why you hollering in my text messages? Like, go ahead and cool out for me for a little bit. But I found it so interesting because all of us got caught up in what I would love to call a filtered reality. It's not really false, but it's something that was filtered in order to draw our attention that we're going to Youth X in 2023, and we're going to be headed to Orlando. I don't know if any of you guys are excited about that, but if you have not signed up for Youth X, go ahead and sign up today. It's going to be the greatest summer of your life, I guarantee it. And we talk about social media and how it could steer us one way or the other way. But there's one app that you can't really do that with. There's one app that I actually downloaded a couple months ago. It's called Be Real. How many of us have Be Real in the room? Any Be Realers? Y'all love Be Real? Yeah. I think Be Real is really dope because for those of us who aren't familiar with it, in order for you to see someone else's post on Be Real, you first have to make a post of yourself. And they time you, so it's like you got 2 minutes to make this post, and then you're able to see what's on the other side, what your friends are posting about, what your family's posting about. So I was like, oh, it's kind of cool. Because you can kind of fake it on Instagram, you can fake it on Facebook, but you can't fake it on Be Real. And I love this app because I think it's just a good reflection of our faith. Because I often wonder how often we block our blessing because we refuse to be real with God. I wonder how often we block our blessing because some of us may be comfortable in living in a false or a filtered reality. in our lives that just never serve us well. I wonder in this place what areas in your life you refuse to be real about today. And I wonder if by the end of this night, if you'll be willing to show God who you believe that you are so that he can show you who he's made you to be. The title of my sermon that I'd love to speak with you guys about today is called Time to Be Real. Somebody say, time to be real. Okay, now go ahead and tap your second choice and say, we about to get spicy. We about to get spicy. I think that God is willing to give us his reality when we decide to be real with him. It's just a firm belief that I have. I think that God is willing to give us his reality when we decide to be real with him. There's a story in the Bible that I would love to talk with you guys about today. It's the story of Adam and Eve. Is anybody familiar with that story? It's in the book of Genesis, so if you have your Bibles with you, go ahead and turn to Genesis 3. But if it's okay with y'all, I would just love to become Picasso for a moment. I kind of just want to paint the picture of what we're really about to dive into really quick. So in this story, we see in Genesis 1 that God is up in God realm doing God things. He's just sovereign. He is good. He's God. Everything that you experience, he was that in the past, he is now, and he will forever be. But we see that in Genesis 1, God says, I'm sovereign, I'm God, but one title that I'm going to add is creator. So he says, let me go ahead and do this. I'm going to create the heavens, and I'm just going to separate it from the earth. And I did that, and low-key, I kind of spazzed. I'm kind of flexing a little bit, so let me go a little bit deeper. I'm going to give y'all a week so I can show y'all exactly how great of a creator that I am. So I'm going to separate the heavens from the earth, and then within the earth, I'm going to create sky, and I'm going to create water. I'm going to separate it, and I kind of spazzed on that too. I kind of went crazy on that too, but I'm going to take it another step further. Y'all ready? I'm going to create birds for the air, and I'm going to create fish and sharks and dolphins for the water. I kind of did a good thing right there. I kind of did my thing right there. But let me go a little bit crazier, y'all. I'm going to create land, and I'm going to create trees and shrubs and bushes, and then I'm going to create little puppies and bears and lions and tigers. And I look at all this, and I'm like, yo, I'm going stupid. Like, why would I stop here? Because in everything that I've created, I realize that there's one thing that I can't do, and that's have relationship with it. So I'm going to go a little bit crazier. If I could be real, I'm going to go a little bit crazier, and I'm going to breathe life into dirt, and I'm going to create the first human being, and I'm going to name him Adam. And we all know Adam because Adam's job on earth, God told him, hey, my boy, what we going to do is I'm just going to let you name everything you see. Go ahead and tell me the difference between a pigeon and a flamingo. Go ahead and tell me the difference between an apple and a mango. I'm from the Caribbean, y'all, so if you give me a mango, I might go stupid. I'm not going to lie. I might go stupid. But he says, yo, I'm going to give you all these things, and your creation is good because I can have communion with you, but there's something about you that is not good. What's not good about you is the fact that you are alone. God says it is not good for man to be alone. So let me go a little bit stupider. What I'm going to do is I'm going to make you a little baddie. I'm going to make you a little wifey. In the Caribbean, we'll be like, yo, that's my little ting right there. You know what I'm saying? That's my little thing right there. So God says, I'm going to create you a wife, and you guys will not only have communion with each other, but you guys will also populate the earth so that all of your children will be able to bask in the greatness and blissfulness that I've given you within the world right now. So they're living in this blissful place that God places them in this garden called Eden, and he says, you can have anything you want. Go ahead, go stupid on the apples, go stupid on the mangoes. I think that Adam was the first Tiger King, because I can imagine my boy riding tigers, doing the whole thing with his baddie, his little ting-ting in the backside, and they doing life together, and it's blissful, and they like, yo, this is dope. And God says, you can do all of this, but there's one thing you can't do. There's one thing that I don't want you to do to show me that you truly love me, because true love will always have a boundary. True love will always have a boundary. So do me a favor, just don't eat from this one tree called the knowledge of good and evil. Just don't eat from this one tree. So he said, okay, cool. So they're riding tigers, they're riding lions and all of this stuff. And we see that Eve, she probably hopped off the tiger and was like, I'm going to walk through the garden a little bit. And babe, we going to be straight. We going to be doing our thing. And she walks through, and she comes past this tree, and there's a serpent that's on the tree. Now, y'all, I hate snakes. So I wouldn't even be, I'm straight. I'm good on that one. But the serpent goes up to Eve, and we'll pick up in Genesis 3. This is where we'll start to dig in a little bit more. The serpent goes up to Eve, and he's like, hey, girl, did God really say that you cannot eat from the tree of knowledge of good and evil? Like, you have all of this land, you have all of this stuff that you're over, but you can't eat from this tree? And Eve says, well, we have everything that we want, but God did say that we can't eat from this tree or else we'll die. Not really die just in the fact that we'll go into the grave, but probably die in our relationship with him. So she says we shouldn't eat it. And I would love to pick up in Genesis 3, verse 4. This is what the serpent responds. You will not certainly die, the serpent said to the woman, for God knows that when you eat from it, your eyes will be open and you will be like God, knowing good and evil. When the woman saw that the fruit of the tree was good for food, pleasing to the eye, and also desirable for gaining wisdom, she took some and ate it. She also gave some to her husband who was with her, and he ate it. You see, I would love to highlight in verse 5 that the serpent said that she would be like God. Someone say like God. I think that's very interesting because they have everything that they need. Why would the serpent tempt her to be like God? If she had everything that she wanted, why would she want to be like God? I think that the serpent realized that Eve was not being completely real within the garden. And I think that there's 4 decisions that we can make to always keep ourselves real. Someone say real. I need to hear y'all. Someone say real. I think the first decision we can make to be real with God is for us to remember the report. Because when we remember the report, we are able to realize what is for us and what is not. I think many times we can miss and even forfeit our blessings when we act off of the insecurity that attacks our identity. You see, Adam and his wife, we noticed that they were real people. They were in a real reality. What I noticed about Adam and Eve is that they were not NPCs. Okay? I just got a PlayStation 5. I play Spider-Man and Call of Duty and 2K and the whole thing. And there's always those people who have the same clothes on. They do the same movements. And it's just kind of robotic. But that's not Adam and Eve in this story. We notice that they're not NPCs because they have a name, they have a purpose, and they have a calling. Just like every single one of you in this room. But I can imagine Eve's tension because as she's walking through the garden and the snake says that you will be like God, she probably had an identity crisis. What do you mean that I could be like God? I kind of feel like Eve had some sort of insecurity because we notice in Scripture that Eve did not get her name until later on within this story. You can look at Genesis 1, Genesis 2, Genesis 3. You do not notice that Eve has her name. We only notice her as wife or woman. So I can imagine that Eve, as she's walking through the garden, before she sees the serpent, she's like, that's a squirrel that just passed me. It's a lion that just passed me. Okay, that's a bear that just passed me. And the serpent is saying that I can be like God, but I don't even know my name. The only thing that I know is that I'm a woman and I have purpose and I have a calling to be a good wife, but I don't really have a name. So if I could have a name, that probably means that I can also be a good wife, because if I look at God's relationship with Adam, that's the only true reflection of companionship with my husband that I see. So what you're tempting me with is good intention that will rob me of my identity? Oh, this fruit might be worth it. This fruit might be worth it. You see, the thing about it is that we realize that Eve was deceived to be robbed of her identity. How do we know that? 1 Timothy 2:14 says this, and Adam was not the one deceived, it was the woman who was deceived and became a sinner. And I wonder if the reason we listen to false truths is because of the insecurity we refuse to be real about. I think it's important to remember that you do have a calling, you do have a purpose, but it's important to remember that you're called to be before you're ever called to do. And then once you remember the report of who God says that you are able to, point number 2, establish yourself in God's truth. When you establish yourself in God's truth, you're able to understand your real truth. Matthew 7 tells us this. It says that everyone who puts the truth of God into practice is like a wise man who built his house on the rock. So what that pretty much means is that whenever you have a challenging life situation, or whenever anxiety is knocking on your door, or whenever you go through something that you feel like you can't really get a hold of, whenever you put yourself on the truth of God, you are able to stand strong. But here's my question to y'all. What is truth? When I looked at the definition of truth, it says this. It says that which is true or watch this, in accordance with fact or reality. So that leads me to believe that everything that is true is founded within reality. I believe that truth is sustainable because we find it in God's reality for our lives. But the fact of the matter is that many of us fall into filtered realities because our foundation is not built on the only thing that is solid. The only thing that is solid is God. And establishing yourself in God's truth not only keeps God's truth for your life protected, but it makes it that much easier for you to lean into my third point, which is accept your journey. See, when you accept your journey, you don't worry about all that you don't have because you realize everything that God is doing along your path. The beautiful thing about your path is that you can even walk a certain walk, go through everything that you go through, and then you'll turn back around and say, wow, God really did put food on the table. Wow, God really did put clothes on my back. Wow, God really did give me health in the midst of that season. You get to see how much he's been there for you and how he will always be there with you as you continue on with the rest of your days. But you have to learn how to shift your perspective. Because when you shift your perspective to follow the journey that God has for you, rather than what culture has to say, or whatever, you try to hit up that one boy in school and he said, you kind of all right, so you kind of live a kind of all right life. Or many of us, you may have hit homegirl in the DMs and you was like, yo, I think you mad cute. And she said, you straight? So you live a straight kind of life. You know what I'm saying? Many of us, I think, the more that we shift our perspective to follow the journey that God has for us, we are able to keep ourselves on the right track. There's a story. I love this story. Every time I think of it, I laugh because me and my beautiful wife, we travel down to Florida every single holiday season. We alternate holidays. And we go down to Georgia. We stop at this gas station right above Savannah. And we pump our gas. We go to the stop sign. And this one specific time, as I'm at the stop sign, the GPS was telling me to turn left. But y'all, I really don't know what happened. Something in my mind took over, and I whipped that. I really whipped that thing. I really whipped that thing right. So, if you think that's bad, if you know my wife, okay? My wife is the most teacher's pet, rule following. One thing my wife gonna do is remember the report. She gonna do that one thing. If you invite my wife to go play Uno at your house, she's gonna throw all of your house rules away. What they write in the instructions, that's what I wanna know. So with this context, you can kind of understand the amount of anxiety, screaming. I mean, this girl was out here banging on the window, help us, get me out. And I'm like, hey, man, like, why are you hollering in the car? What's going on? She said, I should have been the one to drive. I knew that I should have taken the wheel in the first place. And I said, okay, if that's what we're going to do, I'm going to just let you be over there because I know that the GPS is going to turn us around. I know I made a mistake. We'll be all right. We'll be okay. We go down this journey. I take that right. That 2-lane road turns into a 1-lane road. And I was like, okay, we straight. We straight. I look at the lights, and the lights start to, like, flicker, and it's like, boom. I was like, oh, we don't got no lights out here. Okay, so I'm only out here with my headlights. Cool. But then there's a deer that walked past, and then there's a snake in the road, and then I'm like, okay, I hate snakes. This is just bringing me back to Adam and Eve. Let's not eat the fruit. We're not going to eat the fruit. So then I continue on in this journey, and I realize if all of that was bad, it would be absolutely terrible if I lose my signal. And guess what happened? I lost my signal. So now I'm out in the backwoods of Georgia, not knowing where I'm going, and the only thing that I can think of is keep on going straight, keep on going straight, keep on going straight. And eventually we get to the highway, we made it, but as I realized, when my GPS turned back on, I realized that took 30 minutes extra of our time to get to our destination. And I think it's very interesting because just like Adam and Eve, because I just didn't learn how to just accept the journey that God had for me, it took me and my wife on a journey we were never meant to go on. And I think a lot of us can relate to that story. One thing I realized from that story, though, is that God values submission. I know we've preached about this. We talk about this all the time in church. God values submission, but I always wonder why God values submission. What is the value that I get if I submit my life to God? What is the value that I get if I submit myself to this walk of life? What is the value that I get out of this? The value that you get out of submission is alignment. When you submit yourself to God, you will always be in alignment. And some of us may be wondering, how do I continue on to this journey? How do I make this journey smooth? How do I make this a good journey for me? I know it's not going to be perfect because I will have some tears. I will have some pain. I will have some things that I go through, but how do I make this journey something good? And the way to do that is by submitting yourself to God. But the only way to submit yourself to God is by first going into my fourth point, learning how to trust him. We have to learn how to trust God before we're able to submit to him. Because it's extremely hard to submit to someone that you do not trust. Extremely hard. I think that Chelsea is the best boss in the entire world. I can shout her out literally all freaking day. I love Chelsea so much. Does anybody love the value that we get within our ACP? Chelsea's so great. And I think everybody that's under her, Charles, Amanda, Haley, we all can say that she is the best boss in the entire world. But I think one thing that we all can agree on is that it would be extremely hard to submit to Chelsea if we did not build trust with her. See, when I got in my role and Chelsea was walking me through how to lead this youth ministry and how to lead you guys, I had to let her in on some personal things. I had to let her in on some moments where I did feel weak, where I was struggling, when I did say, in the future I see this kind of happening, but I don't know how it's going to turn around. That really built trust with me and Chelsea, and that made it easy for me to submit to her. And learning to trust God is not always easy. I'm pretty sure we all can recognize that. But when we trust God, it always reveals the reality of what he has for us and those around us. When I learned to trust Chelsea and be submitted to Chelsea, it not only benefits me, but it benefits my household, benefits this ministry, it benefits this church, but it all comes from a place of trust. And I think many times we get used to covering up ourselves because we don't want to trust people, or we get into these filter realities where we get stuck into this place. But here's something that I noticed, y'all, is that when you're real with God, he is able to reveal his character to you. Some of you guys may be wondering, what is the value of character? What is that? Why do I need to know the character of someone? The character of someone is going to let you know how they are, no matter if you turn the car left or if you turn the car right. It's going to let you know that this is the kind of person that I'm under. This is the kind of person that will be with me. This is my ride or die, and if I want to accept them in my life. This is how you value trust. This is how we build trust. And later on in the story, we get to see that Adam and Eve had a decision to be real with God. Later on in the story, we get to see that after they ate the fruit, they hid themselves and they were naked. And it says that God comes into the picture. And he says, "Where are you?" And they say, "Well, we're hiding because we're naked." And God gets a little bit confused in this text because he says, "Who told you that you were naked?" Because I believe that nakedness was the truest form to show that you can trust me. You don't have to hide yourself from me. This is supposed to be normal. Who told you that you couldn't trust me? Who told you that you were naked? And Adam goes out and completely sells out his wife. He says, "Yo, this woman you put here with me was the one that gave me the fruit, and that's why we out here hiding ourselves with fig leaves. Like, I'm just going to keep it real with you, OG." And God says, he turns his head to Eve, and he says, "What have you done?" Because I don't think that you realize that you just entered into the world this thing called sin. It creates separation between the both of us. And on top of that, everything that you have on the inside that you want to birth, every time you have birth, every time that you give birth, you will have pain. And that's a whole sermon that I can get into. But everything that you have built up on the inside is going to cost you something now. Everything that you want to do, Adam, the Bible says that by the sweat of your brow, Adam, you will eat. So everything that you want to do within the ground, every time you want to put food on the table, you're going to have to work extremely hard. This was never what I intended. But if you would have just been real with me, we could have maybe had worked this out. You see, we see in this part of the story, we see that God's character is a character of conviction. And that for a lot of us in this room, that may be a little bit scary. That may be the reason why you refuse to be real with God, because you're afraid of the conviction that comes with what you're dealing with. But I came to tell you today that there's grace for you. I came to tell you today that there's love for you, because it says that in Genesis 3:21, it says that the Lord God made garments of skin for Adam and his wife and clothed them. I don't know about you guys, but it's really hard for me to understand that in the midst of Adam and Eve going against God, he still clothed them within their exit. He still clothed them after they sinned. He still clothed them after they disobeyed. But that just shows me that God's character is not only a character of conviction, but he is also having a character of covering. And that's the beauty of the God that we serve, because God is always true within his character. And that same God that we see in this story in Genesis is the same God that we see in our world today. See, I just believe that God is willing to give us his reality when we decide to be real with him. When we decide to be real with him. When we decide to remember the report of what he said. When we decide to establish ourselves in his truth. When we decide to accept the journey that he has us on. When we decide to learn to trust him in each and every situation of our lives. And I wonder if there's anybody in the room that is willing to say, God, I'm willing to be real with you right now within my situation. I know that I've been covering myself with this filtered reality. I know that I've been running from you. I know that I refuse to be real with you, but I wonder if there's anybody in the room that would be willing to stand up in this place to say, God, I'm willing to give myself to you today. God, I'm willing to worship you today in this place. So if everyone can just go up and stand on their feet, we just wanted to create a moment where we can be real with God, where we can worship God in a real way, where we can give God the real things within our life. So as we end out this moment, Father God, we just thank you. We honor you for all that you're doing within our lives, God. But Lord, I pray that you may get to the inner depths of our heart and convict us while clothing us within this moment. Pray that you may bring us your spirit in a way that you never have as we lift up praise to you in this moment. Come on, is anybody willing to be real with God in this moment? Is anybody willing to say, Father, you are worthy. Father, you are good. Holy Spirit, you are the one that I truly need. Not what culture says, not what those people have said, but Lord, what you have said in this moment. Is anybody willing to be real with God in this moment? Come on, give God some praise in this place.